Welcome to an AAHRPP educational session on applying for accreditation. AAHRPP offers a day-long workshop at our annual conference on how to apply for accreditation. In 2020, because of the COVID-19 public health emergency, we are providing this pre-conference workshop through a series of videos. In recognition of these unusual circumstances, we are providing these videos free as a resource to the community. We are extremely grateful for our presenters from the conference, who were excited to move forward and provide education through videos. We thank all of them for generously devoting their time and extensive experience. I will now turn it over to Wesley Byerly from the University of Connecticut and UConn Health, and Kate Volakovich from AAHRPP.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Kate Volakovich. I'm the Director of Operations at AAHRPP, and Wesley is an AAHRPP Council member, team leader, Step 1 reviewer, and site visitor. So at this point, you probably have listened to Josh and Sana speak about the site visit and their perspective from the organization. And you've also heard the site visitor's perspective when listening to Delia and Michelle's presentation. But just to recap, the draft site visit report will be received approximately 28 calendar days after your site visit. It will be emailed to your application contact, and it will reflect in writing any areas of concern that were verbally communicated to your organization at the closeout session of the site visit. All areas of concern identified in a draft site visit report require a response. And as a reminder, we ask that you do not contact the team leader or any of the site visitors after the site visit if you have any questions about anything on the draft site visit report. Please contact AAHRPP. This is an example of what a draft site visit report will look like. When you receive your draft site visit report, please read it prior to responding. The response should address the areas of concern identified during the site visit. Every area of concern should be addressed in the response and should include details of steps taken and changes made, all education and training performed to remedy the area of concern, and any monitoring subsequent to education and training. The response to the draft site report is due in 28 calendar days or 20 business days from receipt of the draft site visit report. The Council on Accreditation will review your response as part of the site visit report. Getting started with your response. AAHRPP has several guidance documents and videos that you can review prior to submitting your response. On our website, under the web document library, we have a document entitled Instructions to Prepare a Response to the Draft Site Visit Report. Additionally, there's a YouTube video that Robert Hood, the Director of Accreditation at AAHRPP, has designed to help organizations respond to the Draft Site Visit Report. As a reminder, the instructions for submitting materials in support of accreditation still apply, and therefore we ask you to review them prior to submitting your response to the Draft Site Visit Report.
So I'd like to pick up here with you're reviewing the areas of concern. Following a site visit, remember you don't need to wait to receive the draft site visit report to begin to consider what your responses will be, so start early. When you're looking at areas of concern, first step back and look and say, okay, what area in the does this apply to? Look back at the evaluation instrument. This is key in providing you information around what the expectations are to meet the area of concern. Written materials, tip sheets that may be valuable in developing your response, and the regulatory citations. Think about, what does your area of concern relate to? Does it relate to written material that your organization uses, practice that needs to potentially be changed? Maybe it's knowledge that needs to be expanded or developed, and perhaps there are other areas. It may be one or it may be a mixture of any of these. And then, as Kate has already pointed out, how are you going to address the area of concern? And each area of concern should address what you're going to do, steps taken, changes made, the education and training around those changes, and the monitoring that will be done to confirm that those changes have occurred. When you're thinking about written material, first consider what type of written material do you need to address? Is it a policy, procedures, checklists, forms, perhaps other written material? Do you need to develop or revise material? If you're developing material, is it replacing existing written material, or is it going to be an addition to written material? Your response should provide information around what you're doing in this area to help guide the reviewer. What's your implementation plan for your written material? Part of that's going to be education and training, but also include other steps that might be pertinent, such as a need to take it to committees or other areas in the organization for review and approval prior to being able to implement. If you're revising material, be sure to include highlights or red lines to guide your reviewer. For education and training, if the education and training has occurred before submission of the response, indicate what those dates were. Be sure to indicate who was educated or trained, IRB members, IRB staff, other members of the AAHRPP, perhaps researchers or research staff. You don't need to submit a full materials for all the education, but do provide some information around what was used, syllabus, table of contents, outlines, agendas, that kind of information. If your education or training has not yet occurred or has not been completed, be sure to include what the plan is across the dates and when you expect to be able to complete the training. Generally, the Council expects training to begin within 28 calendar days, 20 business days of receipt of the draft site visit report, and no later than the date of the Council meeting. If you have an area of concern where training or education is not planned or isn't appropriate, be sure to provide an explanation, a reason or justification about why that is the case. Don't just simply leave it blank. Monitoring is an important area to ensure that the changes that you've put in place have in fact occurred. If you've already conducted monitoring prior to the submission to the response, provide a summary of the monitoring and narrative. You don't need to submit specific researcher names or specific protocols, but a detailed narrative that allows an assessment of the scope and success of the monitoring. If monitoring was begun but not completed or is planned for the future, include that in your response also, along with a timeline so that the reviewer has a sense of what the scope is. In general, again, if the Council and Accreditation would expect monitoring to begin within 28 days of the receipt of the draft site visit report and no later than the date of the Council meeting. You need to include evidence of implementation that the revised policies, procedures, or what has been changed has occurred. So required language and contract, evaluation feedback of IRB members, what was provided. What are your strategies to improve practice can be and should be part of your response. Again, as with education and training, if monitoring is not planned or not required, provide an adequate explanation, justification, or reason why. The default should be that monitoring should occur unless there's a strong justification why not.
Thank you, Wesley. Now, after you have completed everything that Wesley has described on the previous slides, you're ready to submit your response to the draft site visit report. AAHRPP encourages you to submit early if possible. When you submit your response to the draft site visit report, please email one single PDF to reporting@aharp.org. Ensure you're following the instructions for submitting materials in support of accreditation, which includes a signed submission form that must be signed by your application contact and the organizational official. The Council on Accreditation is comprised of members appointed by the Board of Directors. Council members are also experienced AAHRPP site visitors. The Council meets quarterly every March, June, September, and December. And since Wesley is a Council member, I'll defer to him for the next slide.
So at Council, we receive the final site visit report. This includes information from the draft site visit, all the information that you've provided in response to the draft site visit, any supplemental material, and it goes to the reviewers on Council who maintain the final determination on accreditation status. Council reviews these in detail prior to the meeting and engages in generally lively discussions around the responses. The determinations that can come out of Council include full accreditation, accreditation pending for initial accreditations, or similarly for reaccreditations, full reaccreditation, or reaccreditation pending. And I'm going to pass it back to Kate here to discuss what to expect after the Council meeting. But do want to say that remember that this isn't a one and done, and you may need to provide multiple correspondence back to AAHRPP, who will then pass this on to the Council to demonstrate that you've fully responded to your draft site visit report. Kate?
Excellent, thank you, Wesley. So to review the accreditation statuses that the Council could award your Human Research Protection Program, the first is full accreditation or reaccreditation. And with those Council determinations, there are three possible post-accreditation pathways. You may receive full accreditation with a contingency report, full accreditation with a status report, or simply full accreditation without need to submit a contingency or status report. Additionally, the Council may determine that your organization does not meet all the standards in the evaluation instrument. If that determination is made, your organization will be placed in accreditation pending, and there is one possible post-Council pathway when your organization is in accreditation pending, and that requires an improvement plan. So contingency and status reports, what's the difference? Contingency reports and status reports are very similar, but the main difference you should be aware of is that contingency reports are more urgent. They must be reviewed at the next quarterly Council meeting. This means that if your organization is reviewed at the March Council, your contingency report will be due May 1st for review at the June Council. If your organization is reviewed at June Council, your contingency report will be due on August 1st for September Council, and so on and so forth. Failure to address the issues identified within the contingency report may result in your organization being placed into reaccreditation or accreditation pending. Status reports, while similar in formatting to contingency reports, will be reviewed at any subsequent Council and accreditation meeting in either 1 month, 4 months, or 7 months. Depending upon your status report, the Council may request additional status reports, as Wesley pointed out. Additionally, if the Council accepts your contingency report, they also may request additional status reports based on that contingency. If your organization does not meet all the standards in the evaluation instrument for accreditation, you will be placed into accreditation or reaccreditation pending. Improvement plans are a chance for your organization to meet all these standards in the evaluation instrument. The Council expects that your HRPP will continue to work toward improving your HRPP in order to meet all the standards in AAHRPP's evaluation instrument for accreditation. And similar to contingency and status reports, improvement plans are always submitted on February 1st, May 1st, August 1st, and November 1st. They are always reviewed at the next quarterly council meeting. Therefore, if your organization is placed into accreditation pending in March, your improvement plan will be due on May 1st for review at the June council. And while the council may request multiple improvement plans, if standards are still unmet, AAHRPP will work with you at every subsequent council meeting to ensure that your organization is able to meet the standards set in the evaluation instrument for accreditation. And with that, I will pass it back to Wesley, and we thank you for your attention.
Kate, thank you very much, and thank you to all the listeners. Do remember that AAHRPP is available to help and assist throughout the process. Make use of that resource, and good luck on your accreditation journey.
Thank you to Wesley and Kate. We really appreciate your excellent support for human participant protections and AAHRPP during this difficult time. This concludes this presentation, but please check our website for other videos in our pre-conference series on applying for accreditation.